Away, guys.
Levy, if we still have you with Fabi, I just want to check in with one question for him. That he mentioned that he would have perhaps taken some different decisions from the ones Wesley did, a different approach. What would be his approach in such a situation?
Well, but you saw my approach. I played a match against Magnus. I mean, it didn't work out. I did lose the matches, but I think my approach was correct. I mean, I took the fight with black. Also with white, I was playing very combative lines. It resulted in like a relatively low quality, but I think that was a result of the complexity of the positions that we aimed for. So like my choices with black especially, like to play the Archangel and this Bishop G4 line, were like a very clear sign, I think, that I wanted to get pretty much the most complex positions. And yeah, the Armageddons didn't go well, but my strategy for the Armageddons and my play was just... Actually, my strategy was okay. My play was just very, very bad in the Armageddons.
But let me ask you, if we just take the rapid portion of the two matches that you played against Magnus, like, you're probably happy with what you got, right? I mean, Armageddon is a totally different beast. With the time discrepancy, the draw odds, like, it's a completely different format, really. I mean, would you agree with that? Or you kind of have to just be able to manage it all in one flow?
Yeah, no, I think the strategy worked out, and everything that I went into with the matches was good. Like, my mindset was good. I was ready for a fight. I was actually feeling pretty confident. It was only some decisions at critical moments and some mistakes at critical moments that ultimately doomed me in those matches. In Armageddon, but also like in the first match especially, yeah, some decisions. Not winning the second game in the second match, losing the first game in the first match, yeah, so not drawing with the white pieces in a must-draw game. Like, there's a lot of things I can regret, but none of it comes down to my decision-making before the match. It was all stuff in the moment, which very often is difficult. I mean, you can't really strategize for things that happen in the heat of the moment. You can get your general strategy, and then hopefully you pick a good one. That's always a difficult question. You never know if, like, you play a risky line, it ends in disaster, and you're like, well, of course I shouldn't have done that. But that's always, in hindsight, those things are easy to say. Also, in hindsight, I chose a risky strategy. It worked out, and it's easy to say it was a good one, but of course it could have also gone the other way. But generally speaking, I think what I did was correct. Like, I got Magnus in positions that he's not 100% confident in. Maybe I'm also not 100% confident, but I was ready for that sort of mutual discomfort that we got.
Fabi,
that's why we got you on here.
Quick question for you, Fabi.
Oh, no, we're still all right. We'll stay the whole time.
You said you don't regret decisions that you made, but do you regret kind of encouraging Wesley to play 1b3? We all saw what was happening back and forth between you two.
No, the thing is, I didn't encourage him to play b3. Because Magnus had his list of goals, which I actually see right here on the whiteboard, and they're all... Okay, Levy's getting them. So they're all supposed to be for this tour, and one of them, he got all of them, right? Okay, I gave him one of them.
Is he having fun? Do we know that? Did we confirm that?
What?
He said he
confirmed
is.
that he's having fun.
Okay, well, he confirmed.
I don't know.
But
did he?
like, he needs to get this last one, so I was like, just prepare for it, because you're going to get b3 in this match. But Magnus is not going for b3. Maybe he's jinxing, or not jinxing. He's tricking everyone by saying he's going to play b3 and then not actually doing it.
We need a sponsor on here. That's what we need.
All right, thanks, guys. And Fabi, we hope to see you again on the broadcast. If you have some time, jump in whenever. Levy, thanks for that. We'll keep checking in with you guys. And meanwhile, there are moves that have happened, some trades, some decisions, fixing of pawn structure, a queen trade declined. But it looks like Wesley is under pressure here. He's the one who's on the back foot.
This looks really bad for white. It's exactly a Magnus type of position. And the eval bar is suggesting that black is way ahead, and it's even material. And the reason why is look how active the black queen is. The white queen staying passively defending a pawn. The knight on c5 for black is peering into the white camp, hitting this d3 pawn as well. And normally when you have this backwards pawn, you want to push it. But if you push the d pawn, down goes the c pawn at the end of the line. So I feel like there are too many weaknesses in this position for Wesley. He's very passive. The b file, the only open file, is under black's control. It looks like it's going to be Magnus's game.
Yeah, so many improving moves for Magnus Charlsen right now. You can occupy the b-file with your rook. You can relocate... Well, he beat me to it, Magnus Charlsen there. I was going to say, you can relocate this black knight out the way. Now, you kind of indirectly control this square even further, making it totally impossible for white to consider pushing this pawn forward to d4. At the right moment, black can just start expanding on the queen side. Maybe black has pawn breaks as well with f5 later, but yeah, it just feels like one-way traffic. And how can Wesley so break out? It just looks like he's almost frozen. This bishop stuck in the corner, the white queen stuck defending this mere pawn on a3. And okay, he decides to go for it right now. I said it was almost impossible, but maybe he sensed Wesley, the momentum was turning so much that he needed to go for this. And at least there's a hit on the c6 pawn as well as the black queen right now. So Magnus has a decision to make. Does he simply drop back the queen? I think the most natural decision right now. Or does he get greedy? There's also the option of perhaps taking this knight in and then winning this pawn. But I think I would be reluctant to go for this because suddenly this bishop, which landed on this diagonal as early as move 2, has potential. It has chances on the dark squares. So right now I'm expecting Magnus's queen to drop back. And okay, game on. Wesley did maybe find a good moment because not quite enough time for Magnus to capture this weak pawn on c4.
I like this decision that you're pointing out. Fall back with the queen. I saw the eval bar did not react to the trade of the bishop with the knight on d4, but it just doesn't feel like the human approach in this position. You give up a dark squared bishop. That white queen can at some point land onto h6. You're looking at that bishop from a1 spitting fire down the diagonal. Yes, you're counting at a knight block from the center of the board, perhaps the f-pawn moving forward. But unless it's based on some direct calculation, direct tricks, bishop takes knight is never a decision you want to take.
It's extremely risky, and we already see the makings of a checkmating attack if you can line your queen up with that dark square bishop. And there are some tactics that will help black out. For example, if this black queen goes all the way back to b8, it protects the pawn and threatens knight b3, a fork of not even just the queen and the rook, but also that bishop in the corner, which is the threatening piece. So if Magnus, if he calculates just one move ahead, because so many of us we'd refuse this line on the spot. I can't allow that dark square bishop looming, just sitting back on a1. But I think he actually can get rid of that piece very quickly, in which case this is going to be a better pawn structure for him and the advantage.
That's a really important point because you see bishop takes knight and somehow there's a psychological block in chess players to make such a move, giving up this powerful bishop for the knight. And Magnus calculates it, he finds it, and he goes for the best move.
He goes for the best move. Whether it's the best follow-up is unclear so far because he didn't drop back the black queen, as looked really, really strong right there. He has blocked the bishop's diagonal, however. He has moved in for the kill of the c4 pawn. So still advantage black, but Wesley, he's given himself some chances, and I'm looking at the clock times. It's not over yet. Far from it. Wesley, so I think he played the best practical choice, pushing d4 there before it was too late, before he was just eternally passive. And it's just about whether he can somehow trick Magnus now, break through the barrier of the black knights.
And most players would prefer to be a pawn down for some activity. You don't want to sit passively, which is what Wesley's position looked like before he decided to strike with d4. So it was a good decision, a needed decision from Wesley. He grabs his pawn on d6, and the c4 pawn is loose, but Magnus instead, he hops his knight forward. There may be some threats, not just against this queen, but also the king. That f2 pawn is a bit vulnerable, that knight on d3. That's a really strong piece.
And you pointed out the threats against the white king, potentially, the queen. There's also the a3 pawn that the white queen cannot stay connected to. You move that queen anywhere, I'm picking up that a3 pawn, I'm attacking that rook on d6, winning more tempo.
Yeah, actually, this rook is pretty much trapped. This rook doesn't have too many safe squares apart from dropping back to d4, certainly blocking your own bishop's diagonal, but maybe there's a way to round up this rook in the middle. I don't really see it right now, but still looks very strong for Magnus Carlsen. And Wesley, he's about to choose a safe square for his queen. Not many options. He actually slides it across to d1 instead, and the evaluation bar drops with that move. I think your idea there, Tanya, take this pawn, restore the material balance, is pretty much guaranteed. And unfortunately for white, you cannot take this knight because you cannot take a second time on d3. Your queen is stuck protecting the bishop in the corner. So black would win material. So this rook is in a bit of trouble right now if Magnus Carlsen takes this pawn.
And Wesley So yesterday said that it's inexcusable in a mini match to lose a game with the white pieces. This one, he's got to be extremely careful. It's big advantage to Magnus right now.
And Magnus grabs that pawn, so material equality. And look at Wesley. He jettisons the pawn. He's going to lose it anyway, but plays c5. Perhaps he wants to distract some of black's pieces. In fact, if that queen takes the pawn, then that tactic that David was mentioning no longer works. If the rook can successfully take this knight on d3, you get 2 knights for your sacrificed rook. That would be a good exchange. But the engine does not seem to approve with Wesley's decision. It says that black is in the driver's seat. The b file is still open for the black rook to slide over. And it feels like as long as you're careful here for Magnus, white's pieces are not very harmonious. There should be a tactic in Magnus's favor.
Yeah, at first glance, if you just showed me this position in a void out of the blue, I would say it's messy. I wouldn't know who was better, who had the advantage. So the computer shows that, the evaluation bar shows that. Magnus's last move might also kind of reinforce that fact, and it's due to the fact the white queen is simply overloaded.
Really beautiful deflection idea from Magnus. He attacks the queen on d1, and he's also eyeing that rook on d6, which looks well defended for the moment, but if you play a move like queen to b1, I think knight takes f2 is one of the ideas here. If the king takes an f2, queen takes c5 with check, the rook is in trouble. The kings also might just get checkmated. If king f1, for example, bishop c4 check, intermezzo, that looks painful. So you might not even need to win the material, just win the game by delivering a checkmate. Wesley, his pieces are all over the place. I don't think he can defend them all.
This looks absolutely busted, and yes, you can keep the queen connected to the f2 pawn, but like you said, the queen is overloaded. Even if the queen was to go to f1, I think the tactics just flow and fall into place. Because yes, after knight takes pawn, you can pick that knight up with the queen, but watch out, that bishop on a1 is hanging.
Everything's falling apart, not just the bishop hanging. This knight would then drop next move. Suddenly, all the loose pieces in white's camp are just falling apart, and Wesley, he does play this move, but I think you mentioned it, Tanya, knockout blow, knight takes f2, just shedding the king of its protection here. And yeah, maybe there's multiple moves. Bishop to c4 looks very tempting, lining up against the queen. Other ideas in the air. It feels just too loose for white, and black's pieces, especially the queen, bishop and knight here, too strong. They've infiltrated behind enemy lines.
The hope for white was that there'd be a dark square attack, but that attack's not even getting off the ground. And the move queen f1, it seems to take away knight takes f2, but as Tanya brilliantly just showed there, the tactic still works in black's favor. So it's one of these things where multiple white pieces defend the square. Black doesn't have any more firepower aiming at it, but because white's pieces are scattered and they all needed to protect one another, knight takes f2 is a beautiful shot. But as David said, even a simple bishop slide, bishop back to c4, or bishop to c2, these moves will still be good. And yeah, he moves bishop to c4. It's, I think, the most natural move if you don't see the tactic on f2.
Yeah, and big threats. White's rook, we've been talking about it. It's pretty much trapped. Black's queen is going to come back and take the pawn we mentioned on c5. White is stuck. White is passive, and this, again, it feels like it's just a continuation of the narrative. Wesley being passive, making negative decisions. Look at that white queen next to its white king. It stemmed from the opening, simply. He was just playing really tentatively, not really wanting to play kind of principled moves, and now he's just being punished.
Threat is stronger than its execution. Magnus Carlsen keeps all the threats on the board against the c5 pawn, tactics on f2, and Wesley so in deep trouble with just a minute on the clock. But Magnus as well, coming down to those seconds. He needs to finish this.
He does, and I think he can steal the pawn on c5. That's step one. That white rook can barely escape. It was a good point to note that that rook doesn't have very many moves remaining. But I'm curious what Magnus is thinking about. Is he looking for a follow-up, or is he actually looking to end the game on the spot with something tactical, whereas he can just snag the pawn and be happy?
Yeah, it feels like Magnus now, his clock time is the main thing. It is Wesley So's major hope right now. It's the only thing that could trip him up, Magnus Carlsen, because just take a pawn off the board, you're up on material, there we go. He captures, forcing the white rook back to an awkward square here, clumsy square, and sooner or later Magnus can start pushing pawns, Magnus can improve his rook. Still, he has fantastic pieces here as black. Maybe he's looking too much for a knockout blow. He doesn't need anything immediate. He's got a long-term advantage.
He's down under 20 seconds. This is a messy position. He moves his queen back from the square it came from, which was a good decision. The evaluation bar on the left-hand side of the board, it approves. So, Tanya, the time, 20 seconds, are you getting nervous for Magnus, or do you still think he has everything under control?
I think it's chaos still. You've got so many minor pieces, and that bishop on a1, as long as it's alive, you've got to watch out for any kind of threats building up against the black king. Right now, Wesley just creating a lift square for his own king, but Magnus's pieces are so dominating. He does fall back with the knight. Feels like because of the pressure on the clock, he's not making the absolute best choices, but still enough to keep things under control.
enough for now, but he has kind of wasted a bit of time with the Black Queen. He's retreated the Black Knight back. That was his best piece. But look at the nerves from Wesley So. He reached out, about to make a move, then tried to hide it. And the nerves are kicking in now. It's the first game of the day. The first game is always the most nervy for both of them as they try to get back in the zone. Wesley finds a great move, trying to trade off the queens. White's queen was passive, Black's queen was active. Those pieces off the board, and he can breathe a sigh of relief. So great move, Magnus. Reluctantly, look at Magnus's face suddenly. It's under 10 seconds.
Yeah, he's 5 seconds on the clock. He does trade the queens. He does have the extra pawn, but watch out for that bishop pair. That bishop on a1 gives white long-term compensation. Black's rook stuck on the last rank, defending any checks of rook d8, and now Wesley gets rid of that knight, the key knight on e5 that was blocking the bishop on a1. Wesley moving forward for the initiative.
But I love the way that Magnus is playing this because now all of his pieces are defended, so he can push his pass A pawn. Wesley has that under control for now, but Magnus, with no time on his clock, he's making sure that some of his decisions will be easier. He will not blunder a piece, at least not yet.
Yeah, the last 5-6 moves have gone in Wesley So's favour in terms of surviving, not losing on the spot, but Magnus is still safe. Magnus still has the extra pawn. Wesley's still nervous, retreating there with the white rook. I'm not sure whether he could have kept it active or not. Either way, now he should be trying to use this momentum. He should be trying to create threats, as he just does against Black's bishop, which is slightly loose. Ooh. And Magnus countering by trying to infiltrate with a black rook down to the first rank.
And White's dark square bishop is kind of trapped over there, so knight d3 played, apparently a huge mistake, and Magnus pushes his pawn, giving up his bishop to win a knight. It's a winning advantage because the bishop on a1 is trapped.
And Wesley So, with 2 seconds on the clock, makes a move. He gives a check, comes back with the rook. There's panic, and Magnus picks up another pawn.
Wow, Wesley So missed that one. Frustration visible on his face there. Now 2-pawn advantage for Black, and White's remaining pawns are dropping off. 3-pawn advantage for Black. This one is winning for Magnus. No time, Wesley So. He made that move with 1 second left. And the Black King is too safe.
Wesley barely getting his moves up, but you could see his body language. He's pretty much resigned before he's tipped the king over. He saves his bishop, but those passed pawns for Black, they should end the game. Magnus gaining time with every move. 3-second increment, everybody. It's bonus time, and those knights, they're hopping in. And now with the trades, when you're head material, you're happy to see pieces come off the board.
And you can see the relief on Magnus. He knows that he's so close to this one. That rook will jump to the second rank, giving a check. The pawns are marching forward, and with the dark square bishop gone, Black's king in absolute safety. And we're going to see the pawns make their way towards White's camp. F3 coming in, and Wesley looks like he's almost on the brink of giving up. You just have to watch out for one threat. That e-pawn, e6, is something that you need to keep under check.
Yeah, and Magnus, okay, he moves his king, but he didn't have too much time either. Still not over this game. Wesley So, he's got one of the pawns back. White's e-pawn still alive. Can he keep the tricks going? And White pawn marches. But I think Magnus has spotted a nice trick here. He will be able to stop this white pawn from promotion.
Oh.
That's beautiful recognition from Magnus, giving that check so the rook can stop the pawn. And Wesley, now his hopes are pretty much dashed. Black has, what, 3 extra pawns in a rook endgame?
And that e-pawn stop, the a-pawn marches forward, and Wesley knows that this is all over. It's unstoppable. He will have to give up that e-pawn. He tries to create tricks, and he gives up. Wesley So resigns. Magnus Charlsen takes the lead in set 2. What a game with the black pieces, getting the initiative. Wesley guarded, playing cagey at the beginning, and that seemed to cost him a lot.
I think it was overly cautious play from Wesley So. He wanted just a position where he could try to outplay Magnus Charlsen, but look at this man. Does he look like someone who gets outplayed very easily? The answer is absolutely not. So Magnus opened 1 file. That was enough to gain the initiative. He ended up making White's pieces scattered, and that's why he leads in this second set 1-0.
Magnus Charlsen with the lead, which means Wesley So has to first equalize the score, then look for his win to take it to set 3. The task gets more and more impossible. How do you make this mission possible for Wesley now?
Oh, it's going to be so tough. Losing with White is the most heartbreaking thing as a chess professional. It's demoralizing. He knows he lost with White yesterday as well. At the moment, Wesley, it feels like he woke up halfway through that game, started playing great fighting chess, but it was too late, and that might break